And we're back, guys. Time for a giant info dump on Street Fighter 6. Everything we know thus far. And by the way, Mir, I can see your face. What's going on here?
Yeah, it's been a while ever since I showed my face on a video, and I'm glad to be back. Not just a voice in the background anymore. You guys can see me, huh?
Right on. Okay, so I wrote up a bunch of notes for us, Mir. We're going to go over everything we know thus far. I'm not going to talk about the painfully obvious stuff that we've been covering all the way up to this point, but a lot of this comes from the recent footage from Flawless Deku and the NYC guys. So I'll post a link to the sources in the video description if you guys want to check out the clips we got this info from. But there's going to be nothing really interesting on the screen. We're just going to talk and go through this as fast as we can. So this video is not an hour long, okay? Because my last video, I was like doing a breakdown mirror and it was like 46 minutes long. And I feel terrible
Yeah, I
about it.
mean, there's just so much to talk about, like.
Right. And keep in mind, guys, this might be the last time we'll see this build of the game because the new build is coming at Tokyo Game Show. And we'll talk more about that at the end of this video. So let's
Right.
begin. Also, a lot of these notes are from Javits as well, who did a lot of testing with the NYC guys, and he posted on Twitter, so I'll post a link to his Twitter page. So the first thing I want to get out of the way is that a lot of people have commented that have actually played Street Fighter 6 up to this point. When they're playing on the stations, some people said the game feels sluggish, right? Or a little underwater. And I just want people to keep in mind that a lot of these public stations are played on leggy setups, right? Because it's more for just the fidelity and look because it's the public playing, but
Yeah.
pro players and stuff are going to be more sensitive to input lag. And anyone who's played on any good setups, or even the NYC guys, they were playing it on a 240 hertz monitor and they had all the right setups and they were playing on PC. And they said the game felt completely fine. There was like no problems of, feeling underwater or sluggishness. Just keep that in mind if you guys hear any of those kind of comments.
Yeah,
So
which is good, especially coming from Street Fighter 5, where we kind of had this problem with, the input delay at the beginning of the lifespan of the game. So it's good to see
7
that
frame
it's already
delay.
sorted out.
Yeah. Okay. The next thing, with that being said, Mir, the input buffering. We've heard this ever since people first touched the game, but the input buffering, like when doing combos and stuff, like the 3-frame buffer window, all that feels the same as Street Fighter 5. Obviously, we don't know exactly the numbers, but it just feels like Street Fighter 5 in terms of doing
Mhm.
combos. So that's the same.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I was quite curious about that because that it was a big part of the Street Fighter 5 system because it changed how, for example, a lot of normals worked in combos and
Hmm.
even defensively, a lot of these things changed completely because of the input buffer. And so it's interesting to see that it's still there.
I'm not surprised it's still there at all.
Yeah, no, me neither actually.
Yeah. Another thing that I'm not surprised, and that they confirmed this now, is that a lot of the special moves that you can do in the air, such as reused Tatsu, you can do them jumping backwards still. It's mostly just jumping forward. There's some small exceptions on neutral jumps. Once again, this is something I'm not surprised that is gone. Capcom really doesn't want people running the timer or doing jump back Tatsu, running
Yeah.
the timer, things like that.
I mean, there's other specials that might be problematic as well. If you can do from back jump, like mini dive kicks, for example,
Hmm.
and air fireballs and what have you. So, as we've seen in Street Fighter 5, like you said, they really moved away from that.
Hmm. Now, the next thing, Mir, we've heard people mention this, but we haven't got any concrete footage on. Is some people are saying that you can no longer cross up in the corner. Now that's actually confirmed now. So what we're saying is, if you're in the corner, the opponent cannot jump over you. So they took that out of the game. What do you think about that?
It's interesting because if I remember correctly, in the older games in the series, you also couldn't cross up in the corner.
Yeah, that
So
really started with like Street Fighter 4 and some specific third strike stuff.
I guess if we really are looking at the way that the directors seem to be looking at the game, where they're kind of like trying to recreate a modern version of older games, it kind of makes sense that they would take it out, especially when there's parries as well and how it interacts with the basic system mechanics. They probably figured that this was the best choice for balance, I would assume, more than anything else.
I honestly think it's just that the corner is dangerous enough as it is, with the burnout
Yeah.
system and now with the drive impact. I feel like it'd be kind of overkill that you can also get crossed up. I think that's just a little too much. So I think
Mhm.
it makes sense they made this choice to get rid of the cross ups. My brother's really happy about this, by the way. I like the cross ups
I
in
can
the corner,
imagine. I mean, it's one
but he hates
thing
it.
less to keep track of.
Yeah. This next piece of information is really interesting, Mir. So, the NYC guys mentioned that when you get stunned, so when you're in burnout and you get wall splatted and you have the stars
Yeah.
around you, you can mash out of it. So when you have the stars around you, when you're stunned, you will just be stuck in the exact same amount of time and then fall to the floor. Now, this
Right.
isn't like a really big deal because you can only do so many things before the opponent falls down. But this is going to allow things where it requires some time, like say for example, you get a bunch of stocks right before the opponent falls, or
Yeah.
in very specific cases, you might be able to charge like a super. So, for example, reuse level 2 super. You're going to be able to fully charge this thing probably to get max deeps when the opponent's stunned or when you know he's going to get stunned, for example, you know?
Right. It's interesting because it kind of like is a way of standardizing the stun timer, right?
Mm,
Because in for example, in Street Fighter 5, you could get away with a certain amount of specials, for example, for building meter before attacking the opponent, or like setting up something,
mm-hmm,
and you kind of had to do it with the basically knowledge that your opponent might be able to mash out of stun as fast as possible,
mm-hmm,
which didn't necessarily always happen. So it's like there's some combos that are only possible if the opponent isn't mashing out of stun and things like that. And they probably felt that it was, a little bit too complicated, maybe unintuitive for a new player. So they'd rather just have that, fixed duration, and then they fall over and the stun's gone. So it's just another way of standardizing this mechanic. Although I'm sure that a lot of people will miss the mashing. It's kind of like a big part
oh,
of
yeah, it's a
Street Fighter
traditional
play.
thing. It helps
Yeah.
desync the match too and makes you lag. And
Yeah, well, maybe that wasn't intentional.
this helps the Urian headbutt loops setups, so that'll be really good too.
Yeah.
Uh, there's also I remember in Street Fighter 5, like one way to test like the max speed somebody can mash out of stun is to set the CPU to the hardest difficulty and stun them. And that's how you test your dizzy setups in Street Fighter 5.
Right.
A
Yeah.
lot of people do that. So, but another thing too, Mir, is like, you get your opponent burnout, you earn the stun, you earn the maximum duration. You can't have somebody with a turbo controller going ham and getting out really
Yeah.
fast when you earn that. You know what I'm saying? Because you get
Yeah.
you
Maybe
get all your
they're.
drive gauge back after the stun. So
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe they're covering their butt in case they invent Hitbox 2 Electric Boogaloo, and
don't even start. I
people
don't
can
want to
just
change the
mash out of
subject.
stun instantly.
I don't
Yeah.
want to change the subject. Don't even say that right now. Okay, next piece of information. In general, it seems that all the characters that are playable right now all have generally good walk speed. I mean,
Right.
obviously we can see that mirror looking at the footage, but people
Mhm.
playing it can like feel the walk speed, And I like that everyone has really good walk speed because this game seems to really reward good neutral.
Yeah, it's interesting because some of the characters that we've seen, we could, infer that they might have faster walk speed than normal, especially Chun Li, which she seems to have. But characters like Ryu and Luke in Street Fighter 5, they just have average movement speeds. So the fact that that average is pretty good, it's important because it kind
Hmm.
of like sets the bar for everyone else, right?
Yeah. Next thing, Javits mentioned on Twitter. I don't know like the context of this. I'm going to have to ask him to clarify probably, but he says you can walk out of tick throw attempts and punish counter for huge damage. I'm not sure if he's inferring that tick throws can be walked back out of because the walk speeds are faster, or because the throw startup is slower, or he's just saying, hey, if you happen to make the opponent whiff a throw. So I can't quite say. Obviously, you can still tick throw. We saw tons of tick throws in the recent footage. But I
Hmm.
wonder if he means that your every character is fast enough to walk out of tick throw attempts now. What do you think?
It's interesting because it could also refer to the fact that normals might have a little bit more pushback on block, and as such it's easier to walk out of the throws, but they must have quite a bit more if that's the case, because throws also have more range than they do in Street Fighter 5.
Right.
So it must be a combination of things. Definitely the result is that if you manage to walk out, then you get a good reward, right? Because of the punish counter window.
Hmm.
And maybe that's what he was talking about in general.
Yeah,
But
maybe.
yeah, and I'm not quite sure either. I'd be curious to know what he meant. Like, have a clarification on this.
Yeah, it's too hard to say with only 4 characters being played. We haven't
Hmm.
seen, there's a lot more characters. If they did get rid, when I say get rid of tick throw attempts, I mean like if it's possible for every character to walk back out of it, that would be interesting. That people won't have to rely on delay tech anymore. But I was really itching to do that delay tech tutorial for Street Fighter 6. We'll see. It would be an interesting change. That's another change my brother would really like. He hates gassing on throws, but
it could be it could work well with the fact that parry is another option that loses to throw.
Mhm.
So in a way, blocking would be much more powerful this way because you can probably block and just walk away, and then this would make you vulnerable to lows. So it could just change the mix-up game
Right.
up close, a little bit. And maybe that's what they were going for, right? Like just trying to change it up.
Mhm. Okay, sweeps. All sweeps cause hard knockdown. It's only
Mhm.
a hard knockdown. It only has enough time for you to just dash button. What do you think about this? I know you looked on some footage on this, Mir, to clarify
Right.
this.
So it seems that, like you said, the sweeps cause a hard knockdown at all times. In Street Fighter Five, it basically required a crush counter,
Yeah.
and it was very obvious when you got one. Obviously, the big spark and all that.
Mm-hmm.
In Street Fighter Six, it just the basically there's a notification on the side of the screen that says hard knockdown. But interestingly, when you get a counter hit or a punish counter, it seems that this knockdown is longer. So it's a possibility that the knockdowns are different based on natural hit and counter hit or punish counter. But it still marks it as a hard knockdown. And as far as we understand, at first we thought that it just prevented you from back rising because of these different wake up timings.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seems that it's like you're forced to wake up at that one single timing, which is how hard knockdowns used to work. They just don't give you a lot of advantage. It's I don't know. It's quite weird, honestly. But it's an interesting way of making sweeps more rewarding, I suppose, because they always have this property.
Yeah, they're way more punishable in Street Fighter Five than they were in Street Fighter Four, so they
Yeah.
should be more rewarding. And I think adding them as crush counters in Street Fighter Five after the beta or after they showed it at E3 was an awesome change they did. So hopefully they add more visual clarity to it. I also remember we were talking about in the Guile trailer, Mirror. We were talking about Guile's sweep on a punish counter and it seemed to have some extra properties as well. So we'll have to see
Right.
with the other sweeps.
Yeah, this could be unique because of the two hits
Yeah.
and the target combo associated with it.
hmm Okay, next change. I mentioned this in my previous breakdown video, but I'll mention it again, Mir. Is that all of Ryu's DPs, all three strengths, light, medium, heavy, are invincible to air attacks. So they're all designated anti-airs. And we can probably assume if Ryu's changed to that, then the other characters as well, their DP attacks, such as Jamie's DP kick or Luke's DP punch, are all three strengths are invincible to air attacks. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's more intuitive that way because for a new player, especially, how would you really know that one DP is specifically used for anti-airs, especially if the game doesn't do a great job at telling you, right?
That's
So
right.
this way, it just makes more sense. And as you mentioned in your own video, uh, you now have access to different ranges for your DP for
Mm-hmm.
anti-airs, which could be important and speed as well, right? Because obviously the lighter DPs tend to be faster as
That's
well,
right.
which could be useful for beating certain safe jumps, for example, or some characters that rely on DPs for anti-airs. They can use them for different ranges.
Yeah,
It's interesting, I think,
big change.
especially because they don't seem to have brought back the full invulnerability on the ground, which
hmm
was the thing that scared me personally.
hmm
So I'm okay with this. I think it's a good change.
Okay, so we got some quick Ryu information now. Javits played this character the most when he was doing his testing, and he was posting on Twitter. So Ryu's standing medium punch into his crouching heavy punch does not combo or link naturally. You have to drive rush for that to link. But most of the time, Ryu players I think are going to be using the back heavy punch command normal because standing medium punch does link into that. So even when you're drive rushing, you probably want to go into back heavy punch because it seems to have more horizontal range anyways. The only time is crushing heavy punch probably does just a little bit more damage, but this seems to be Ryu's like new go-to bread and butter link.
Right, and the this back heavy punch is supposed to resemble his old close heavy punch from the Street Fighter 4 series and previous games.
Oh yeah.
You can kind of this kind of like standing uppercut that he does.
hmm
And I'm curious because it's probably faster than crouching heavy punch, which is why it works. But I'm curious if, for example, linking into crouching heavy punch, maybe in the case of a punish counter or a counter hit, would be more rewarding because it could go into a higher strength, say, for example, donkey kick.
hmm
So maybe there's going to be some interesting, decision making there based on what you're able to land.
hmm Next piece of information: Ryu can do cross-up Tatsu. Dude, 6 years of patch notes
It's
in Street
back,
Fighter 5,
baby.
and they never added this, but finally in Street Fighter 6, he can do cross-up Tatsu super. Maybe that'll bring Daigo back. We'll see. What do you think
But
about this?
it's not gonna change anything. But
It's
at
not gonna
least
change.
it's not gonna change anything. But at least real players have it. At the end of the day, it's a fun extra thing to have, and I think it's fine in the grand scheme of things. Another interesting property of this cross-up Tatsu is that when you block it, it pulls you in instead of pushing you out, which I don't think is the same in the other Street Fighter games. I feel like it always has pushed you out.
Maybe they just don't want you to get away with it. Like if you block it, it's more punishable. They're like, hey, you can have it, but don't throw this out mindlessly. Maybe. I
Yeah,
don't know.
that's very possible, especially when it comes to parry. Maybe that would change how you're pushed back, or if you're pushed back at all.
Yeah. It's like Ken V Trigger 1. They go crazy with that cross out Tatsu, man. We don't
Yeah,
want
that's
that.
true.
We don't want. Okay, next Ryu thing is the first hit of the Tatsu hits crouchers. So I guess they
Right.
streamlined that so they don't have to add a million moves to Ryu for his
Was,
combos to work.
I was gonna say there was a change that they introduced in Street Fighter Five pretty late,
Hmm.
and I have to say I personally don't like it. I,
Yeah.
I think that because you have Donkey Kick,
Yeah.
that's the move that you use to hit crouchers.
Right.
So I don't see why Tatsu would hit crouchers too. It's really odd to me because it kind of takes away from the. Why would you use Tatsu? Right? I guess different Oki, but I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm not convinced personally.
The beta version of Street Fighter 5 Ryu, the medium kick Tatsu was the only thing that hit crouchers. They tried to
Right,
make a difference on the strengths.
right, but he didn't have Donkey Kick back then, right? So it made complete sense. I think that was perfect.
Yeah. Well, we're probably gonna see a bunch of balance changes in the future, anyways.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's very possible. It's very possible that Tatsu has a complete different role
Hmm.
than Donkey Kick, right? And as such, this was necessary because it's important to land it for other reasons. So
Hmm.
I'm keeping an open mind, but on a surface level, I would have preferred that to be a little bit more different, I guess.
You can't. So they tried cheating the system and getting a crush counter standing heavy kick with Ryu after someone, was recovering from a DP or whatever, and then tried to do raw parry drive rush to only spend 1 bar and continue the combo, but it was too slow. Mir Capcom thought of everything. Confirmed.
Yeah. Oh, I guess we should say that when we say crush counter in this case is because some normals have unique properties when you get a punish counter, and Ryu standing heavy kick basically behaves like a crush counter where
Yeah.
you crumple and you can get a free combo. I think from a balancing standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. In
Hmm.
fact, out of this, I'm curious how it's gonna interact with the stun. Right? If you get a stun in the corner, are you gonna do a raw drive rush combo on the poor guy that's standing there? There's a lot of possibilities.
Okay, some quick information on Luke. His light punch, medium
Yeah.
punch, heavy punch, target combo is special cancelable. But in case you guys missed that, he can also do it on block, which is interesting considering how powerful that target combo is. So you can
Yeah,
go
that's
light,
true.
medium, heavy into into his fireball and make it safe.
Right. It's interesting because it moves you in,
Hmm.
and Luke's fireball is not particularly safe, at least in Street Fighter 5. So
Right.
it's possible it still would be punishable, but it wouldn't be, nearly as unsafe as if you just had done it and done nothing.
You can OD it, and special cancelable also means that you can drive rush from it too.
Right. That's true.
We saw some. This is really weird. Okay, so Luke's
Yeah.
charged Flash Knuckle. There was like a very specific point in the footage where Ryu did a super, his level 1 super, his Shinku Hadoken, and Luke charged his Light Punch Flash Knuckle and absorbed the whole super. What the heck was that? Was that a
Yeah.
bug?
It looked fairly odd because normally when there's multi-hitting projectiles like the Shinku Hadoken, you tend to see a bunch of sparks on screen because they've been absorbed, but it just went away. It just was like
Yeah, I don't know.
disappeared.
Luke's
So
got
yeah, that
Popeye
that was
arms.
fairly odd.
Anything can happen. Another thing too that I noticed is like every character seems to have 3-hit light confirms. Like every single character. It's very odd,
Yeah,
like crouch and light kick, light punch, light punch. A lot of easy 3 light hit confirms, which
it's
is more rare in
something
Street Fighter Five.
right, but still, even though it is more rare in Street Fighter 5, it is something that they moved towards in the last patch, especially. A lot of characters that didn't have 3 light hit confirms, they kind of like gave them to them. They're a little bit harder to achieve, I suppose, because you need to use specific normals. While in Street Fighter 6, it seems that you can kind of just do whatever 3 lights you prefer.
Hmm.
It could also be to give more space to something like doing double lows and then still being able to confirm, especially because of the fact that a lot of people might be walking back, as we described before, especially for take throws and such. So it could be for that as well. The lights needed to have less pushback. so that you were able to do better confirms basically.
I think lights are going to be really strong in Street Fighter 6, especially since there's no strength priority in this game so far.
It seems that from what we know so far, then none of the characters that were playable right now had 3 framers, which
Yeah, that's
obviously
true
is
too.
unconfirmed, but it could be a big deal if they just decided that no character should have them,
Yeah.
Maybe only specials.
Oh, this piece of information is interesting, Mir. So we know that Drive Rush adds frame advantage to your next attack, right?
Right.
But it actually enhances some attacks as well. In particular, Jamie's launcher, his down two kicks. If you just do his launcher raw and then you jump up for a juggle on your opponent, you can only
Yeah.
juggle with jumping medium punch, and everything else whiffs. But if you do a
Mm.
drive rush into his launcher, and the drive rush and the launcher is the enhanced button, he can juggle into anything like his jumping heavy kick. So what's up with that?
Yeah, that's interesting because I guess this is a way to incentivize people to use normals that don't leave opponents on the ground, right? Because naturally, if you know that the drive rush is going to give you extra frame advantage, that's what you would go for. But at least in this way, it makes it possible to get more interesting combos from certain moves that would cause a juggle state, right? And then now they give you a better juggle state. So I think it's just Capcom thinking of everything, right? You can see for other characters. I mean, obviously, I would think of Guile. Guile has his high kick that doesn't knock down normally in Street Fighter 6. We saw that in the footage that we had.
Right.
So it's very possible that with the drive rush is going to knock down and give you a combo.
True. Yeah. I would also imagine that Jamie's launcher will do the same thing if you do it from a punish counter, like raw without drive rush. I would imagine it would have
Mm.
this property as well.
Yeah, that's very possible. I mean, then you got to start asking, what do you do when you have a punish counter and a drive rush at the same time? Do they just die?
You can do anything you want. I mentioned this in my previous video too, Mir, but all crouching medium kicks in the game have extremely extended hurt boxes. Just like all the crouching medium kick nerfs that we've had in Street Fighter V to like characters like Cammy, Luke, or Kadeen, all those nerfs are like straight up in Street Fighter 6. Like every crouching medium kick has it. It's insane.
Right. It's good that it's there because from what we could see so far, at least as far as I could tell,
Hmm.
they don't seem to have extended recovery like they do in Street Fighter 5 in some cases. But because they do have the extended hurt box, then because of the punish counters and like being able to buffer into drive rush, for example, in neutral and things like that, it really works with the risk reward. It makes sense, I think.
All the players that have played it, they've commented that crouching medium kicks feel like there's a lot of weight to them, and
Hmm.
that might be the reason why. But I think crouching medium kick is probably the most deadliest button in Street Fighter 6 because of drive rush. So like a crouching medium kick leads to an entire B&B combo now. So they have
Hmm.
to make it as risky as they can, and it's just naturally going to be the most used button, especially if you're coming from Street Fighter 5. So
Right.
so now, yeah, we'll have to see what it's like in Street Fighter 6. I think at the beginning it's going to be a crouching medium kick fest, but I think over time, especially when you start playing better players, you have to think twice on using this button because a whiff punish on a crouching medium kick, ironically, goes into a crouching medium kick into drive rush. Like you'll get punished by the
Yeah, yeah,
very
it's
combo you're
it's just a
fishing for.
deadly,
Yeah.
just as deadly both ways, right?
Hmm.
And I guess another way of thinking about this is that the crouching medium kick doesn't necessarily have to hit to be dangerous.
Hmm.
Even on block, the drive rush can give you a plus situation where you get a throw mix up or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
just being able to outrange it and punish it becomes even more important because you don't even want to block it.
Hmm.
Like you just don't want it anywhere close to you.
And I just want to clarify this one more time, Mir, that every single character to this point, all four, can literally crouching medium kick, drive rush, medium heavy, or medium
Yeah.
you. Every character, including Chun Li, just so you guys know. So I'm going to assume that's going to be a streamlined B&B for every character.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I mean, we only have four.
Assuming that it's not gonna be changed, That's
That's
always a
right.
possibility.
Assuming. Here's a weird one. Overheads are safe, apparently. You can't punish overheads on block.
Based on what I can see, to me they look all faster.
They
I
look
don't know if
faster
it's because
too.
of the
Jeez.
I don't know if it's because of the animation. Maybe they're just harder to see,
Hmm.
but it kind of looks faster. And I think it makes sense because they thought of parry, and parry
And
can
drive
parry highs and
impact.
lows. Yeah, and drive impact. Yeah.
Yeah.
So by making them safe on block, at least it means that if they accidentally block it or they block it on reaction, but they don't drive impact it on reaction, you don't get boned. So I
Yeah.
think I think that makes all sense.
There's certain overheads, I swear, Mirror, I have 100% block rate on in Street Fighter 5. I'm telling you, man. Like,
Well,
I
I
mean,
can tell you that it's not Laura's overhead.
there's some okay, no, Laura's overhead. I have a 0% rate of blocking, especially online. But like things, there's obvious ones like Ibuki's overhead, right, or Chun Li's
Yeah.
overhead. Those are like drive impact bait, all right, or perfect
Mhm.
parry bait. They're not gonna want to have those kind of buttons anymore. They can't. They have to
Mhm.
balance. Those are safe on block in Street Fighter 5 too, by the way. But
Yeah.
there's gonna be some really obvious telegraphed ones. Like I don't know, Alex's overhead or Abigail's. So you're right. They're definitely looking at the universal mechanics and thinking how overheads basically got nerfed because of it. So they gave it a little
Mhm.
little little buff.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit more of Street Fighter 3 or Street Fighter 4, where overheads are either very, very difficult to react to or just straight up unreactable in some cases. And again, I think it makes a lot of sense with how they're handling the game mechanics.
hmm Javits also mentioned how level 3 supers freeze the timer, but I'm sure Amir, you since you did your super video, you know everything about this timer and the super.
Watch my video. Uh, yeah, I mean, it's all the supers as far as I can tell. Not even the ones that go into a big cinematic. They just freeze the timer at the very beginning during the startup when the screen freezes. And I guess they're just done away with timer scam this way.
Yeah, if you guys don't know what timer scam is, it just means that if there's like 3 seconds on the clock or whatever, the opponent can't just the timer can't save you from getting hit by a super. Some of these supers have long animations, and you're basically checkmated if there's 3 seconds left, and the
Hmm.
opponent tries to run the clock on you, right? So
Right.
they got rid of
Th-
that. They can always clutch even if there's a second left,
yeah,
basically.
and this is a change that interestingly a lot of other fighting games have have done as well. I can think of Tekken and others that freeze the timer.
Oh yeah.
So it's an interesting standardization of fighting games, if anything.
Hmm. Okay, this piece of information is interesting too. Nurse Lee mentioned this on Twitter, and he was pointing out. So we know that Jamie on his OD palm smash, his core circle back two punches, he can juggle in the corner his heavy kick DP, and
Right.
specifically, it looks really weird. It looks like it shouldn't combo, but it does. Okay, it looks
It does
jank.
look weird.
It looks jank, but the opponent does a tumble animation,
Hmm.
which would imply that this tumble animation means that he's in a state where he could be OTG'd. We don't know. We don't know this. We're just assuming. So we started looking through the footage on other things that can put you into this tumble state, and I noticed that Ryu's level 2 super and Luke's level 2 supers do this as well. Ryu's a little specific. Nurse Lee pointed out that you have to fully charge the level 2 to get the tumble state, or you have to get the Denjin stock and do the level 2 to get the rolling state. But if you can OTG after that, that would be amazing, Mirror. Even if it's only in the corner, because it would justify having a level 2 super that's only doing damage and not an install that's really cool, like Guile or
Right.
Jamie.
Because it would do even more damage
Yeah,
in the
because
core.
Chun Li can juggle after her level 2, right? So if these characters get juggles but only in the corner, that would be mass deeps and it would look really sick, right?
Mhm.
So what do you think? You
Yeah.
think you're gonna be able to OTG with these tumbles?
I noticed that some of them seem, if anything, really tight in the sense that there doesn't seem to be a lot of time
No,
to
that's
be
why I
able
say in
to
the corner
juggle.
for sure. It has to be the corner.
Yeah, so if anything, it would be for a character like Ryu, something like a DP. I
Yeah.
feel like normals don't seem to work
hmm
based on what we've seen so far, unless some characters will have
It's
unique
probably
normals
very
that
specific.
do hit you out of this.
But come on, man.
Um,
Luke level 2 mirror into ODDP into over OD down? Like,
Jesus
come
Christ.
on. How good can that be? Come on.
The thing that I find interesting is that some moves seem to have this state on punish counter, or at least in certain specific situations.
Uh
Like in
oh.
the case of Ryu, again, we have the donkey kick.
Oh
If the
no.
heavy donkey kick hits you on a punish counter, you go tumbling away.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm curious if that is just to basically give you some extra corner carry and better Oki, maybe, and it's just visuals to make it look
Yeah.
cool. Or if it's like you shimmy someone in the corner with a raw heavy donkey kick and they
How are you
just
gonna
die.
land that? That would be
I
so
don't know,
slow, man.
but if you do land,
I
they
mean, if the
just die.
opponent does a raw DP on you when he's in the corner, that's the only way you're gonna land a heavy punish counter
Maybe.
donkey kick, unless you're crazy.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But it is it again, like I said, it is a thing that happens. So I'm not quite sure what it is for.
Further testing required, and if
Or the
this is the
testing required.
case, this would be really open up the combo system for Street Fighter 6. That'd be very cool. Okay, last piece of information, and this is something I would not have guessed, but drive reversal is actually throw invincible. I would have not have guessed that. So that's confirmed for
Yeah.
sure. I've seen it with my own eyes.
Yeah, and it seems to be because instead of throwing it like they would have wanted you to do with a Viraverse on Street Fighter 5,
Yeah.
they want you to drive impact it or
Hmm.
parry it, I suppose.
Yeah. I guess if you think about it, throws would be way too powerful. Because then throws counter parry, drive impact, and drive reversal. That's a little too much. Plus throws do
Yeah.
double damage on punish counter.
Yeah,
So
punish counter.
I mean, you gotta spend something. Like you gotta spend some meter here to punish this thing. I don't know. I guess it makes
Yeah.
sense.
I kind of cast my prediction some time ago that the drive reversal would be this unused mechanic that is really good, and I feel like this is coming, like to fruition. It seems to start having properties that we wouldn't have guessed at
That's right.
first, and I think it's actually quite fast. Like as in, it seems like a very good V reversal, So it could very well be very, very useful, especially if the rushdown turns out to be quite strong in this game.
The drive reversal is definitely the most boring universal mechanic out of the other
Yeah.
drive system ones. So that's why no one's really talking about it. But I think it's really important, man, especially on moves that are like guaranteed, that you can use it on, like really slow moves, like Bison knee press or whatever, right? Or whatever character has where you get the guaranteed damage and you knock them
Right.
down. So it has to have some heavy counters to it. Otherwise, people are going to abuse it because, like I said, you're not sacrificing your V trigger this time. You just got to
Mhm.
spend drive meter for it. So
Yeah.
it could be really
And
powerful. It has the
mhm.
potential to be really strong.
Especially because if you're forced to block stuff for a very long time, you're gonna lose drive gauge regardless.
Hmm.
So might as well spend it to get them away from you, right?
That's right.
And another thing that I think is worth mentioning is that we already see some characters that have drive reversals that hit more than once. Chun-Li's hits twice.
Oh
So
yeah,
it
she does
doesn't
the
seem that
two
the
kicks,
standardized
right?
thing. Yeah, she does 2 kicks,
Oh yeah.
like windmill kicks, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, and so that probably doesn't interact much with drive impact because it is more than 2 hits anyway.
Hmm.
But it could be useful for interacting with other armor moves, especially if some characters are gonna have, like moves with a single hit of armor that
Yeah.
might change a few things.
And that's it, Mir. That's all the notes. Like I said, I didn't want to mention the painfully obvious stuff. But if you guys have been following Street Fighter 6 up to this point, you guys are caught up. Now for the disclaimer, Mir. So everything that we just talked about, everything that we know by this point, guys, keep in mind this is all subject to change. We're all talking about version 0.100, and finally, TGS coming up in less than 15 days. We're going to see a new build in the game, and it looks like that's going to be the build we're going to see from now on because they already confirmed that the EGX event coming up at the end of September will also be using the new build with Jerry, Kimberly, and Guile. So this is it. This might be the last time we see this like old footage. I'm sure you guys are super happy to move on and learn new things about this game. But at least we have it documented, Mir, and like we have it written down. And I'm sure we're gonna see a ton of changes, especially balance changes on the game.
Right. And like you say, the thing that's most interesting at this point is seeing what changes because it kind of gives you an idea of where the developers want to, where they want to bring this game.
Hmm.
Because we've been talking about things like, oh, is drive impact too strong, for example, or is drive rush going to be too oppressive? And if we see these things changed, we immediately know that there was, a problem that was perceived even at Capcom HQ and they went after it. So it'll be interesting to see what they thought was too strong or too weak, or if they're not going to change anything at all as far as balance. That would be even, interesting in its own right, right?
Right, right. And the more characters they add to the game, the more complicated it gets to balance. because more characters can take advantage of these universal systems. So it's gonna be interesting now once we get to like 7 or 10 plus characters. Anyways, Mir, we lied once again. We said we wanted this video to be short, and it's probably like over 30-40 minutes. So I apologize, guys, but if you went through this whole video and listened up to this point, we appreciate your guys' support. Listen to this and being as excited for Street Fighter 6 as we are. And when this TGS footage comes up, we will, go crazy and break everything down for you guys and basically start over again on all the information. All right, let's close up shop, Mir. Let us know in the comments below what you guys think of all of these changes and info thus far. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Bye-bye.